Welcome back to A Fresh Story, the podcast where we have conversations about brave decisions to start over again. I'm Jenny.
And I'm Olivia, and we're so glad you're here today.
Hello, sister.
Hello, sister.
Olivia
What's up?
just sat back and crossed her arms. It was the cutest thing I've ever seen.
Like 1990.
She just sat back.
Why was that like a thing in the early 90s? Like everybody, I feel like every
just crossing their arms. I blame crisscross.
Remember the Got Milk ads?
They really were pushing cow's milk hard on us.
Pushing the cow's milk hard.
Big milk. I mean, you want to talk about conspiracy, but it's big milk. I mean, who do you think? There's also the pork, the other white meat. Like these, we just accept. Yeah, we just accept these as being like that's real. It's like pork isn't a company anyway.
Pork is not a company.
Pork is not a company. We spoke with
Susannah B.
Susannah B.
Which, by the way, Susannah is like my top girl's name.
It's a great name.
I always wanted to have a daughter named
Susannah.
And,
we had a really big day when we talked to her.
It was February 2nd.
February 2nd when our article in The Cut came out. And we were going into that interview, and we always do our best to come in.
Just to like circle back for a second, we knew this article was coming out, but we didn't know when. No. And so I was on a call.
And we didn't know that it was already out in print. And
we didn't know that.
Bedroom.
And sitting in my room, which we'll get into. But I was on a call with Megan Bowen, actually. Yeah. And I look over my screen and I see Jenny staring at her computer screen, which is much bigger than my screen.
Yeah, I have an external monitor. Yeah.
And I see this big, beautiful picture that says divorce registries. And immediately I was like, oh no, is that about us? And in a good way. And she kind of nodded. And so, sorry, Megan, if I seemed distracted on that. But the rest of the day was a flurry of just excitement and people.
It was a really great surprise. It was a really beautiful illustration too.
Beautiful by Kelsey.
By Kelsey, and we'll tag her. And so we just really appreciate that. But it was such a big day, and we were just coming into it, the interview sort of emotionally exhausted, to be honest with you. And Susannah was she lifted us both up, like from the
beautiful energy. She is a space holder for people. Like she just, she holds space so beautifully. And so Susannah is as a actress, musician, writer, director, again, all the things, so accomplished. And she's been in the industry so many years, and she just, but really what we talked about was the power of song, right? And like singing. And she has this amazing, I'm not going to get into it because I think it's so beautiful.
Don't get into
it. Tells it. Yeah. But she did something really amazing with some people, and it was so awesome to hear about it, and like hear about like how singing can be so transformative.
100%. And so, yesterday when we had all these things to celebrate, and Olivia and I aren't always the best at celebrating. We come from a Jewish tradition where the idea is if you celebrate too big,
the other shoe will drop.
Yeah. That's why we break the glass at the weddings, is something bad has to happen. We have to scare the bad spirits away. And so we're trying to be better about it. And so we created a playlist for ourselves yesterday of celebration songs, and the number one song on the playlist, and we send this to our publicist Beth, we send this song back and forth all the time, and we all came to this song on our own as a celebratory song, is Don't Rain on My Parade by Ms. Barbara Streisand. And we played that song on our way back from our lattes from Southbound Coffee. Again, Southbound.
Sponsor us.
Feel free to sponsor us. We played that song again. We played that song. I played it. I turned it all the way up. The speaker system in my car doesn't work anymore. So I have a little Anchor like speaker that's attached to the dash in my car. And it's quite nice. And we turned it up and we sang together. And it was the power of singing and the power of singing together. It was a core memory for me, for sure.
And we don't talk about it, but I mean, like, when we sing, we put a vibration into the world, and it really does change. It changes the energy around us. Just like we say, when you can change the things around you change when you can sing. And, one of my favorite songs, always, that I cry every time, is Sing a Song from Sesame Street, right? And
which Susannah's mom worked on Sesame Street. Carol worked. Yeah.
And so I try to sing it to my kids because the lyrics are so beautiful, right? Like sing a song, like sing out loud, sing out strong, singing good times and bad. And
don't worry if it's not good enough for anyone else to hear.
Don't worry if it's not good enough for anyone else to hear. And it's just so powerful.
I can't get through that song without crying.
So we had a beautiful conversation with Susannah B about song, the power of song. And we know you're going to take away a lot of beautiful gems from this. So enjoy the conversation with Susannah. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe to A Fresh Story so that we can keep telling fresh start stories. Susannah is an accomplished singer-songwriter, screenwriter, and actor. A Los Angeles resident for most of her adult life, Susannah grew up in Manhattan as the daughter of well-known Broadway composer lyricist Carol Hall. From an early age, Susannah was acting off-Broadway and singing professionally in New York City clubs. She is currently writing a comedic musical TV series, which I'm excited for. And as a singer, Susannah has performed at many clubs in LA. She has also released 6 albums of her own pop songs, as well as an album of retro jazz standards, which we were just listening to and loved. Mm-hmm. Susannah has a lifelong passion and dedication to philanthropy. She has been involved for many years with Peace4Kids and Kidsave, 2 organizations based in LA that support foster youth. Susannah lives with her husband, 2 teenage kids, and their fluffy dogs in a newly redesigned house in LA, where she's converted the garage into a performance space that she hopes to soon use for charity fundraiser shows. And we are super excited to have you here tonight and chat with you all about Fresh Starts. You have, by the way, that was like a fraction of her bio. She has an amazing long bio, and I was like, how am I going to put this all in there? So, Susannah, thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you so much. I'm really glad to be here. This is really cool. And now that I've listened to a bunch of your episodes, I'm even more excited to be here.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah. How are you doing tonight? Let's start there.
I'm doing well. I'm actually sitting in the garage that was aforementioned, that has been set up to have events. And I just finished a meeting with someone who came over today about an event that we're going to be having to celebrate a local public radio station that we really love here. And we're going to have a jazz performance in the garage. So it's
amazing.
It's all working out.
Does that painting or art behind you say "More Love" on it?
It does. Isn't that cool?
I love that. Yeah, that's awesome.
It's by a guy named Joel Wexler, who is a Los Angeles-based artist. And I had to get it because when I saw it, I actually wrote a song called "More Love" many, many years ago. And it was about kind of basically like, that's what God is to me, is just more love, more love. And so wrote this whole song about it. And when I saw the painting, I said to my husband, that's ours. We got to get it. So we did.
I love original art.
Perfect. Well, why don't you take us back to the beginning of your Fresh Start story? I know you have many, so
well, that's I'm old. I'm older. The older you get, the more you have. Hopefully,
that's true. Because I think people that are intelligent and wise, they go through their lives and they're constantly starting again.
Well, yeah, and I was thinking about, at first I thought, oh gosh, I don't know what, my fresh start journeys. I don't know, do I have any? And then as I started talking with some friends of mine, I realized, oh yeah, my entire life is a fresh start journey. I have done this quite a bit. And I guess it goes back to, I would say, graduating from college. My first brave decision was that I moved out to LA, and I didn't know really anybody here. I basically knew like 1 or 2 people here. And I could have gone back to New York, where most of all my friends were going who wanted to be actors. But I'd grown up in the city, and my mom was in the business, and I just felt kind of like I wanted to make my own mark. Yeah. And I happened to fall in love with LA the second I stepped off the plane. So that was my first really big fresh start. And I think I have a couple of categories I'll talk about, because I'm in my 50s. Okay, so I'm way older than you guys, and I definitely am looking back now and realizing that I think fresh starts have been basically the most brilliant, like magical moments of my life. It's not to say they were easy. In fact, oftentimes those are really, really hard, because you guys know, something ends and then a new beginning happens that you didn't plan. And I just noticed often my fresh starts have been like, when I said yes. I noticed you had a whole program about the power of saying yes. Yeah. So anyway, I've had a career. I came out here and I thought, I'm just going to be an actor. I want to be an actor, and acting on television and films and, in theater. And in my 20s, it just didn't work out the way I wanted it to, which I think is a lot about maybe being in your 20s sometimes.
Yeah.
Listen, I'm not quite, it's not quite fitting the picture that whatever you had in your mind, whether it was getting married or something else. So I had this really detailed, career trajectory I had been focused on for a very long time. And it didn't happen that way. And so sort of because I was uncomfortable just waiting around for acting jobs that weren't coming, I started writing and at a playwrights festival. And then I wrote a play, and then that play, someone loved it and said, "Oh, will you turn it into a movie?" And I was like, yes, okay. And so then I became a screenwriter. And, and I had for years said that my mother did music. She was into musicals. She was a wonderful, accomplished songwriter, kind of a hard act to follow, in certain ways. And I just never even considered it. I sang when I was a kid, but I was like, no, that's what my mother does. And I'm an actor. And, but then in my late 20s, I actually gave up cigarette smoking, which was another brave decision, I guess.
It is.
Big one.
And they said to me, well, what are you going to substitute for it? And I was like, oh gosh, I guess singing. I used to sing. I haven't sung in a decade. Okay, I'll do that. And the minute I flipped that switch and started letting myself sing again and put music, through my body, I just started waking up in the middle of the night with songs coming through my head and lyrics. And so it wasn't until literally like age maybe 28 or something that I started making music, and as an indie artist, and, finding different musicians and producers who I liked, many of whom I've stuck with for quite a long time, but putting out a little EP here and an EP there. And I guess my Fresh Start journey has had a lot of twists and turns, but artistically, I realized that it was kind of like I had my whole time before I was a mom, then I got married, then I was a mom. I had to find time to keep putting out music. And so I was doing an indie pop rock thing. And then I switched to jazz about, I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago. And it was, again, something that fell in my lap from a neighbor saying, "Hey, would you like to do a different kind of singing than you've ever done?" And I said, yes. And I've continued to kind of, weave back and forth in different genres. And just recently, I connected with a young DJ guy who I had known for most of his life because I'm friends with his mama. And he's really talented. And I had hired him to take some of my songs and do EDM remixes. So we put out an electronic dance album, and it's been getting a lot of play in like Brazil and Colombia and like Central America. It's been really amazing. And it's done better on Spotify than, many other things that I've done. And so it's just, I continue to be surprised by the directions that I go in, but those are all my fresh starts artistically.
I think so often when we have people on this show, one of the themes we hear over and over again is, I said yes, as you said, say the power of saying yes, but I said yes and I did things before I wasn't ready. And I was open to the possibility of new experiences. And, it's that intersection of being prepared and saying yes, right? So you train up, you get your voice ready, you take your classes, and then when these things come along, you're ready to go.
Yes, I think that's very true. Yeah, you can't just sit around and kind of wait for people like, okay, I'm just going to wait for say yes. I think, you have to keep your creative pilot light lit if you're a creative person, or just if you're enjoying something in a hobby kind of way. I mean, but to keep being a beginner, it's quite humbling. It can be extremely frustrating. And, I think even as the older we get, it's harder to be bad at things or to try something new. But on the other hand, I've seen that I think it really keeps me youthful and energized, because like another thing another fresh start is when I had my son when I was 37. So I was kind of an older mom. And so I was like 42 and I'm sitting on the tennis court watching my son, who's terrifically athletic, play. And he's little. We started him when he was little and he was taking more lessons. And I was just sitting there the whole time, like I'm sure some moms can relate, right? You're just sitting on the sideline like, wow, here's an hour of my day that
Yep.
I try to find other things to do. And finally I was like, why am I sitting here? I really like tennis. I like watching it. I never really played as a kid. I had a few lessons, but wasn't a lot of tennis in Manhattan at the time for me. And so I just I booked a lesson at the same time as my son's lesson with like another guy, so, and I was definitely a beginner. And then I like slowly started kind of doing more and playing with like some other moms. And now, whatever it is, 15 years later, I'm on a USTA like women's team at my tennis club, and I play doubles, and I'm really into it. And it's great. Like I actually became an athlete, and
you followed your joy. You saw your son having joy, and you were like, that looks good. I want some of that.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Okay, so I'm going to ask a question that is related to my personal life, but that relates to you. So my fiance is a musician, and he wrote songs for a long time, or music, I guess, but without lyrics. He was in a post-rock like metal band, and they were all instrumental. And it was only recently that he started writing full songs, music and lyrics. And we were talking a lot about that process and what that means for him, and how it took, a long time for him to get to that point where he was able to write songs. And I wonder, you say they started coming to you at night, and obviously you grew up with your mother who was writing songs. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about your process of writing songs, because it's a very hard thing. I was just on the phone with him, and we were talking about how he has 12 songs that he's working on right now currently, and each one you sort of write a little piece of, and then you go to the next one the next night and you write a little piece of that. And I'm wondering what your process is.
Wow, that's so great. I don't have 12 songs going at the same time. Wow. Well, I think whatever I described of, that started happening in my 20s, that really started me off, was like the most magical kind, when you're just kind of like, it kind of comes through. And I think every songwriter will say there are those rare times where you really just get something. I saw my mom get it. She once came in and she was like, oh my God, this just came right through me, like felt like dictation. And I've had that too. But I also, it's a craft, and I took classes, songwriting classes, and pop songwriting classes, and pop chord classes, and did a fair amount of studying that way. Also working with different producers who have different tastes. Took me a while because coming from my mother and New York City, Broadway, like lyrics have to rhyme perfectly. My mother was an acolyte of Sondheim, and she did a perfect rhyme every time. See, that's a perfect rhyme every time.
You learned.
Perfect rhyme is not line. It doesn't, it's not going to rhyme with line. These teeny tiny little things. Some people don't care at all. Rock and roll, they really don't care about that stuff. And so you just have to know what genre you're in. But my process is, because I do more than one thing, and I do act, and I do write, and I have some different things going on, I guess my process has become more kind of like I swing back and forth like a pendulum, So when I'm doing music, then more music will flow. And if I'm not doing music, then I'm not writing any songs, it's kind of like that.
Feeding the
one
beast.
of my tricks is because I'm not a player, I don't play an instrument really well, which is really would have been a nice thing to have learned to do. That I felt a little too old. I really tried, but like after many years of piano lessons in my 30s, I was like, forget it. I should learn this when I was 12. But I know enough to write chords. I think if you're not, for me, because I'm not playing, music all the time in my house, I set up dates with people who I can work with.
Okay,
and like this coming week, I'm going to be in the studio on Monday and Tuesday. And I know that there'll be some stuff, just little snippets of songs that I've already been kind of cooking. I record a lot of stuff on my phone. And so when I'm in the studio and I've got the juju magic flowing, I'll probably go through my phone and like look at some of the things that I had sung in the last couple months and see if there's anything there.
So one of the things we talk about with a lot of guests is, we just had this conversation last week with somebody, we grow up as one person, and then we go through marriage and motherhood and jobs and all these things. And then at some point in our life, we almost go back to the person we were when we were a child, right? And we were like, wait, what did I like to do? And what made me feel joy? Were you always so creative growing up? Did you always love to sing and dance and act and write? Is that just something that was innate in you forever?
It was. I have thought a lot about, yeah, those moments of joy when you're a kid, because one of my most primal memories is I went to a great progressive elementary school in New York City called the Little Red Schoolhouse down in
Yeah,
Greenwich
we know the Little
Village.
Red Schoolhouse.
Really great place. I was there for many, many years. All my childhood, it shaped me wonderfully and gave me quite a progressive education. Like it's, Black History Month, and I feel quite proud because I got a lot of Black history when I was growing up. Really incredible. But anyway, there was something called an assembly that they did, whatever, I guess once a week or something. And we would all, have different performances we would do for the whole school. And I remember I was a big writer, and I was writing. I guess we always had to write in notebooks. And I remember realizing like, oh, I can be popular when I'm writing, because I started doing a serialized story about kittens, and I would name all the kittens after my friends, and everybody wanted to be in my kitten story, and
I love
every
that.
day they'd be like, was I in it? What did my kitty do? So then I decided my next piece was going to be a modern version of Robin Hood. And it was, at the time, I'm dating myself, but whatever, I'm in my 50s. We were trading wacky packs. That was like the big thing. So Robin Hood traded wacky packs in this scene that I wrote. And I cast myself as King John so that I could sword fight with the boy I had a crush on. I cast my nemesis, like the other girl in the class who was like quite popular, and we were a little bit rivals, but we were friends. I cast her as the lead. I was no dummy. I knew I had to I put her in a good role. And I just loved being like the writer, director, actor with my friends. And I still, dream of doing a production with my friends. I haven't done that yet, but I've done a lot of the other things. Yeah.
And then I have two sons, so I think about this a lot because I'm a writer, a creative person. How has motherhood affected your creativity, and your spirituality around creativity?
I think motherhood's, it's hard. And I think more and more people are talking about how it is hard. And I just love, people like Glennon Doyle who and Dr. Becky, and
we love Dr. Becky.
Dr. Becky. I mean, I just listened to her and I thought she's talking to me. And I don't have little kids anymore. They're actually not even teenagers, barely, because they're both out of the house now, which is that's another podcast. But it's I think it's really challenging. I was really lucky because I always had the ability to have help, to hire a babysitter. Now and again, we didn't have like a live-in nanny or anything, or even a regular, huge nanny spending all the time, because I was a stay-at-home mom. But I made the time to go and do my stuff and to get out of the house. And my mom always did that. She always had like an office kind of place she would rent to go. Although I do remember her also writing when we were little kids at home. And she would like plug us in. We had like earphones that plugged into our like old fashioned TV. So we sat like 2 inches from the TV with our little earphones in, and she'd be, writing a song.
I love that.
So I think it's challenging. You have to just schedule it, I guess, and to do your best to try to find some ally or husband or partner or whoever who can, allow you to go have an hour here, an hour there.
Yeah, I always say
again, I set up dates for myself. Like I would say, okay, let's make an album. And so if I knew I was going to do that, then I once I say it, then I have to do it, because I feel like I'll be embarrassed if I don't. So
I know. I always say a good babysitter is worth their weight in gold. We love our babysitter. She's like part of the family. So of all the things you've done and written, what is something that you are just the most proud of? And I'm sure you're proud of everything, but is there one thing that you feel like came through you and you just had to get it into the ether and it just makes you so proud?
Yeah. I think actually a project that I did, I guess it was about, I don't know, 6 or 7 years ago. It was an EP, and I had done a lot of pop rock and stuff. And it was before my jazz album, and I was just kind of thinking like, what's next? And I realized that like on all of my albums or, EPs that I put out, there was always like one song that was kind of spiritual. And I wasn't raised with any particular religion. So, but I did find a way to connect with what I consider is divine, and I found that out in Los Angeles at a spiritual home, which really was wonderful to find. And so I decided, you know what, rather than just having one little song on every album that's kind of like, oh, that's my spirituality over there. Why don't I just do the whole thing and be kind of open about the fact that I really do look at life in a certain way. It's not always easy to look at it that way. I think having faith in any context is challenging. And so I wanted to try to deal with some of that on the album. And I had been leading some singing groups, something that I had done as a participant, and then I ended up doing it with some men who were getting out of prison as kind of a therapy, like, because I'm a big believer in like the healing power of music and just singing, and not making a choir that sounds amazing, but just like the act of singing is transformative. And I had seen it with these guys who would spend 1 hour with me a week at this sober living facility they were in. And I knew that they had responded to a couple of the songs that I brought in. And one in particular, for example, was an old 70s funk kind of cover that I loved. That was I just want to celebrate another day of living,
Song.
So I had like gotten all those guys to sing that. And then I realized that is such a good song. I'm going to cover that. And so I did a version on my EP. And then those songs have stayed alive because some of those are the ones that the young DJ guy in the last year, Jay Wells, has remixed and that we've put out for the dance floor. So those songs, there's one called I Am Here that's been my most popular song so far, because now there's another version that was in a short film that I just did a year ago. Someone came to me, and it's an old friend, and her husband's a writer, and she said, my husband wrote this script and we hope you'll do it, and will you sing your songs in it? And I was, and those songs that I sang in it were 2 out of 3 were from this album. That was the kind of the spiritual album. So that's the one that feels to me like, wow, that's a while ago that I wrote those, and they're still evolving and people are responding to them. So
I love that. Tell us more about working with those men, because I know that was a big part of your journey.
Yeah, that was another one where I was taking a workshop, being a student, which I'm always good at being a student, but I was taking it with this incredible master teacher of song, and she had like taught one of my mentors. Issei Barnwell was the goddess, and then my mentor is Maggie Wheeler, and then these women were watching me, and I kind of looked, I guess I looked like a grad student or something, because I like knew what was going on. I knew the harmonies, and what the woman who was teaching the class had said to me, hey, can you go over and help the altos? They're having trouble finding their part. These are 4-part harmonies we were singing a cappella. And so I'm learning everything by ear. So anyway, they saw me kind of participating in a slightly more advanced way than a regular person. And afterwards they said, hey, we have a foundation, and we're very involved with, people who are incarcerated and them supporting them as they return to society. And would you ever want to do something like this in that setting? And I said, yes. And I was terrified. And I wanted to say like something about my fresh starts, i.e. brave decisions. I just want to say to everyone and myself, because I've started to recognize, for me, terror is part of the process. And I've just recently stopped being so surprised that I'm absolutely terrified out of my mind, and that the voices of failure are like screaming, pretty much every time I do something bold or creative or brave, And I just have started to learn to kind of, well, Dr. Becky has a lot of advice on, you can talk to that part of yourself, have a conversation with it. And I also find a lot of courage from checking in with friends of mine, my husband, who I know are like stalwart supporters, who are going to be like, you can do this. You got to, especially when you're at the beginning of something creative and you want to put something out there, whatever it is, be really careful about who you tell, because all it takes is one little scratch on the record or whatever. And that I've had this, and someone says one thing that's a little bit not so nice or whatever, and I could put that away in a drawer for the next 5 years. We're very vulnerable and fragile when we're putting out stuff. So I answered your question.
No, just about working with incarcerated men and what that was
Oh,
like, because
so
I know
sad.
that's a big part of your story.
But I liked what you had to say a lot. I think
I
that's very
love that,
important,
and
because
I actually have more questions about that.
Yeah, I think
I mean,
I'll let you answer the question, then we can go
Right.
back to that
well,
point.
those guys, I did it for almost 3 years. And then I stopped because I did another fresh start, which was I adopted my daughter. And at that time I realized I don't have time to do this once a week with these guys. But sometimes I worked with 4 guys and sometimes I worked with 45 guys. And it was just different every time. Some were so open, some were extremely closed, you know. It was completely interracial, as jail often is, and you know, very split up. But I do know that one thing I realized a lot over and over, it's so old fashioned, but you know, you can't judge a book by its cover, especially with some of these guys I would see who to me looked scary, you know, and mean. And there was this one guy one time, an older man, and he was looking at me with this look. And I thought, oh my God, he looks like he wants to murder me. Like he really looks scary. Like I'm afraid why is he's not singing? And he was just, I don't know, so intently looking at me. And I was worried. And he came up to me at the end, and it turned out he had lost his voice. His trachea had been removed. Didn't have a voice to sing with. And he said, I was watching your lips and pretending that I could sing like you sing. You have such a beautiful voice. And I was there. I wished I could sing, but I couldn't. And I was like, wow, I was really off on that perception, you know. And I just think we have to remind ourselves again and again, especially in these difficult days when everybody's so fraught and you know, defensive. Like we really don't know what's going on with other people.
No, and I want to just say too, like for people, because they can't see Susannah. Susannah has a beautiful energy. Like you really, you have such a calm, I can see how when people are around you, they see you're holding space for them and that you're a safe person to be with. And so like that's very evident just on Zoom. So I can imagine that, you know,
I can tell you, because Olivia and I both have a very sort of like exciting emotional day, like a happy emotional day. And I can see both of us coming into this. We've both like calmed down, and we are also rising to your energy level, which we both needed. So we're very grateful. And I can tell, like, being in this space with you, it feels very sort of just holistic and beautiful and serene. And
I can imagine you know, just being with these, you know, 45 men, and you're this, you know, little woman in this way, you know, and like guiding all of them. I would love to know more. I'm a little bit obsessed with this idea that like singing is primal. Right? Everybody can sing. And I get very angry. I'm going to be very honest with you. I get very angry when I hear people say they can't sing, or this person.
Yes.
And I know, I love singing. I grew up singing. I mean, I'll tell my story. I mean, I didn't grow up singing. I love singing. I'm constantly singing. It's probably my ADHD, but I'm constantly singing. When I was in the throes of my very emotionally abusive marriage, I stopped singing. Right. And people often say when you stop singing, that's a real problem, that your soul is dying inside. Right. And so for me, it took me a long time to even remember I had a voice, and I'm like a theater kid. Like I love Broadway. I went to theater camp, all the things.
We sang in the car together. Right. Don't Rain on My Parade. The two of us.
We just
like screaming, like singing and crying today. It was beautiful.
So my point is, like, I would love to hear what you have to say about this as somebody that grew up in the musical world and singing and teaching singing. The power of finding your voice is so important, and we do not talk about it enough. So I would love to hear what you have to say about that.
Well, I mean, you're preaching to the choir. You're using words that I've used. When I taught that workshop, it was really the first time that I'd done something specific about kind of singing for wellness. But in previous times I've done a lot of different sort of charitable / artistic work. I had done a lot of work with teen moms at one point with a friend of mine, and we helped them write a play that they performed, and I helped them write the play and a rap song. And like seeing these girls and how they had gotten up, some of them had, you know, were unable to speak to us, so shy when we first met them, so shut down. And then they were up on stage, and I've seen that, and that's incredible. And that's why the performing arts are absolutely essential for young people. So essential, because that's when people are finding their voice and need to find their voice and be encouraged. So that's one thing. In terms of singing, what I would say to the guys, because they were all like, I'd walk in the room, and I had a lot of regulars after a while, of course, but at the start, I mean, if there was a new group, because guys went in and out quite a bit, I mean, they'd be leaning back with their like arms crossed, legs crossed, like, yeah, right. What are you showing up to do? And I basically would say, okay, let's just do a science experiment. Like, just close your eyes. Like, if you had to rate your mood, your energy right now from 1 to 10, and 1 is like you're basically sleeping, and 10 you're like bouncing off the walls, where would you be? Silently, just don't share it, whatever. Take note. And then at the end of the hour, we're gonna check in again. And I would lead them in this, thing. And it was really hard to get guys to sing, it makes them look weird. Everybody feels so vulnerable singing. But I would say to them, yeah, vulnerable, because when we sing, it is primal, like you said. And I think it's so vulnerable. It's like we show a part of our soul when we sing. Yeah. That's the magic of it, but that's also why it's so terrifying. And yes, it's very very upsetting to think of how many teachers have shut people down and said, you don't know how to sing, because so many people have gotten, burned or, wounded by someone who said something mean. And I feel like we've veered off way into the like American Idol and The Voice. And, someone used to say to me, why don't you go on The Voice? And I'm like, I can't sing like those people. Like, I'm so intimidated by that kind of thing. There's no, like, I just felt like, no way. And other people would hear me and think, why? That's crazy. But that kind of singing for competition, that's something else. And I came from singing, but I also came from a lot of solo work, right? Like people on Broadway who did cabaret acts or whatever, they sing their big number in the show, a lot of solos. And for me, I've really recently realized, like, I really love group singing. There's a very important type of healing energy that happens in a group. If you're at a party and everybody even sings just one song, like kind of off the cuff, funny, all like, it changes the vibe.
I cry every time.
I'm tearing up just hearing you talk about it. Like, it's very emotional.
Well, and I mean, so I have started using, like, people sing in the shower, or people sing, in the car. I have said to these guys, like, if you're having a bad day or you're really down, start singing. Go, just take a walk and sing to yourself. And, I became kind of the weird lady in the neighborhood who was walking her dogs, but just singing. But like, I could track how I could really change my energy in like 10 minutes. I mean, very quickly. And the guys started coming up to me going, I was a 2 when I came in, and when I left, it was an 8, and I'm like, yeah, that's great. That's good to know. And again, it doesn't matter what it sounds like. It's how it feels.
Yeah. Oh, I love that, Susannah. I love that. That is so beautiful. And I love everything you just said. Yeah. I do. I think it's so important to talk about that.
It's true. It's true. And I think it's such a connected thing to our spirits. I mean, I don't know why these men feel it's necessary to tell us this, but my ex used to just be like, you just don't have a very good voice. And I would be like, I don't know why you would think that's an appropriate thing to say to me. But okay. And, and it's so funny. Well, because they know what it is, right? They know what it is. And it's a little way of saying, like, something about you, I just don't like it.
Yeah. I mean, compared to who? Like, who?
And why? I'm not putting a record.
I mean, like, who are you measuring me against?
But do you think that there's got to be something related to, I'm just thinking even historically, right? Women in history, right? We are told so much, be quiet, don't be loud, don't talk so much, don't use your voice, right? And I think that there is a power that comes, like you said, that's our soul that comes through us when we sing. It's powerful, right? When we can sing, and people don't necessarily like that power, right? When we put it into the world. Yeah.
That's right. No, you're absolutely right. And it does connect to our own voices and our personal power. And like, I would say to these guys, it doesn't matter to me if you like singing or not, you are going to go singing, but you are at a point where you're coming back from a time where you've been away, right? Now you're back. Some of these guys were lifers. I had a few, guys in the class I became, very friendly with who were coming out of jail after 35 years, 40 years. One guy kept joking. He was like, I missed the whole DVD thing. I missed the whole thing. And so they were coming back, and I was like, it is so important for you to be able to have a voice and find your voice. And this will help you. I truly believe it will. You can roll your eyes at me all you want, but they're connected,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I'm very curious, and I imagine it changes, and I imagine you go through phases, but what are you listening to? Who are you listening to right now? Who's inspiring you right now? What song can't you, are you playing over and over? What are you singing? Are you singing your own music? Are you singing, other people's music? I'm always curious about that.
Cool. That's a really good question. I'm singing a lot of my stuff because what I'm going to do in the studio is actually, it's kind of artistic recycling because I didn't really completely plan my musical career. I actually have 3 different artist names on Spotify. It's really annoying. First I was Camp Susannah, then I was Susannah Blinkoff, and now for a long time I've been Susannah B. So some of my early stuff I never even put out on SoundCloud. It was just, physical CDs or I have a cassette tape I put out years ago. So anyway, I wanted to take some of the older stuff, and I was looking at like best of Susannah B. So I'm taking about 7 songs into the studio on Monday and Tuesday, and I'm going to do new versions with new musicians who I've never worked with, which is only one guy I've worked with. So that's all really cool. So for that, I've been singing my own songs and trying to come up with different ways to sing them, different phrasing, different rhythms. But I've been listening to, well, first of all, I love my local radio station, KCRW, which I get most of my new music from listening to KCRW and Morning Becomes Eclectic, and KCRW 24 Eclectic. It's 24 hours on Sirius XM. It's great. So I love all that. And I listen to a lot of new music. I love this band called Mount Joy. I've been listening to a lot, MT period Joy, Joy. And I played their album a lot. Who else? I love Salt, this group that I don't know that much about them. SAULT, really great grooves. I'm really into grooves. I mean, my music is, it's always been groovy, toe tapping, like kind of, and then, even the jazz stuff, when I did this retro jazz thing, I still approached it from like a groove. The groove comes first for me.
I love that.
I love, I love Haim. I just saw Harry Styles the other night. That was cool.
Nice. I heard he puts on a really good show. Yeah.
He did. And I just bought some tickets. I love music, live music. So I spent a lot of my money on that. I just bought some tickets for Beck, who I've seen all my life, but never seen. Great. And and Wet Leg was this brand new band who opened for Harry Styles, and they're very hip and put on a great show. 2 women. It was cool.
Do your children play music?
Yeah, actually, my son is a drummer, and so he is at college in Santa Barbara, and he is making music, and he turns me on to all different new music all the time. He's got great taste. I adore Billie Eilish. I just think she is the most incredible and such an incredible singer, and I have definitely sung along with her quite a lot to pay attention and study her phrasing. She's really she's terrific.
She's very interesting. I was just mentioning her to Olivia the other day because as far as I know, her brother is the only one that produces her still. And I think he's incredibly talented.
He's amazing.
And I think that the intimacy between the siblings of that closeness, you can just really feel it, that he knows exactly what to do with her voice. And I think working with my sister, I understand that there's such a an interesting, and they were homeschooled. Did you watch the documentary about her?
Yes, I did. I know. I love them. And we actually they grew up not far from here, and we have little crossed wires in certain ways, but I think the 2 of them are incredible.
I think musically they're such an interesting situation.
I
love that. So Susannah, if somebody is going through a fresh start in their life, what would be some wise words that you can impart to them?
Well, I think I did say it before, which is expect the terror.
I love it.
Expect the failure voices to go on loud. Make time to maybe talk to those voices, and just know that you are not that entire feeling. That's just a part of you that my therapist says wants to protect us. There's just a part of us that doesn't want us to be hurt or embarrassed or have people tease us or whatever. And so, whether it's writing, dialoguing with it, letting it know, like, I got this. Like, I was even driving to a USTA match a week or so ago, and there was this voice in my head that was like, you're going to lose. You're going to lose, right? You're definitely going to lose. And I was like, wow, this is not helpful. Okay. Yeah. And so I had a little talk with the voice, and I ended up saying, like, I understand your concern. There's going to be a loser, and it could be me, but I do know how to play, and I'm not going to get reviewed by the New York Times, and it's really okay. It's just, so, I think you can do it that way. And like I said, I think finding allies, finding your sister or your partner or your best pal or whoever who they absolutely will never let you down. They will always tell you, you got this. You can completely do this.
I love that. And then the most important question we ask all of our guests, which you said at the beginning of the show, you had a good answer for, so we're ready for it. What is the last thing that you ate and truly loved?
Okay. It is this biscotti that is made in this Jewish bakery in Rome. Okay. And in Rome, because the Jews had to live in this one little section and they weren't allowed out and everything, there's a Jewish synagogue there. And right behind the synagogue, I don't think it even has a name. It's like unmarked. There's this bakery, and you go in and the biscotti looks really burnt and horrible. It looks misshapen and like not appetizing at all. But years ago, I had it, and it was the most amazing biscotti, and it's like chewy inside and sort of like marzipan, but like it's just so damn good. And there's dried cherries in it. I don't know. It's so wonderful. And I'd never had anything like it. And recently, my stepmom, Sharon, went to Rome, and she actually brought it home on the plane for me and FedExed it to me the next day. I savored, and I would cut off little slices, like, how all day you're slicing like 48 slices.
I love that. Well, Susannah, it's been such a pleasure chatting with you and hearing everything. And I just love your perspective on life and like how incredibly balanced you are with everything. And like, I'm sure it's a pleasure to work with you and to write music with you. And we're just so excited to like keep listening to your music and sharing your story, and we're psyched about everything you're going to be recording. And I just want to add to, like, you are an incredibly compassionate person who gives back. Like, I didn't read half your bio, but you are constantly giving back to the community and to people. And I want people to recognize that and know that you are not just an actress and celebrity and singer and all these things, but you're also a philanthropist and humanitarian, and that's really important for us here at Fresh Start. So we appreciate you taking the time and chatting with us.
Thank you. And I'll just tell everybody who's listening, you can find my music on Spotify and Apple and all those things under Susannah B. And Instagram, it's at Susannah B Music. And Susannah is spelled the old-fashioned way, S-U-S.
I know, it's my favorite. It's my
N-A-H. Yeah. So Susannah B Music. Yeah, check it out.
I love that. And we're going to link to everything in the show notes too, so everybody can find you. Thank you so much, Susannah.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to today's story. We're always here, and we're proud of you. Until next time, brave one.
A Fresh Story is brought to you by Fresh Start's Registry, the first and only platform for everything you need to start again. You can read the show notes and learn more about today's episode at freshstartsregistry.com/podcast.
As always, we want to remind our listeners that while we strive to provide accurate and helpful information, we are not medical doctors or mental health professionals. We want to remind you all that the information shared in this podcast is not a substitute for professional advice. We highly recommend consulting a qualified healthcare or mental health professional for any concerns or questions you may have. Remember, we are a podcast, but we are not licensed medical professionals. Always consult with your healthcare provider for any medical decisions. And as a gentle reminder, all opinions are our guests and do not necessarily reflect our own.